if you want to chat, and if not, I'm going to kind of just talk into the void. So, mileage may vary. Okay, I'm going to pull up the Son Goku track. All right. I mean, that's a great start. Lots of just like rumble garbage below 20 hertz that could just go. The low end kick and bass is not well defined. So you would want to go in and get kind of cutty and give them their own space. And I'm going to go kind of quickly through these. If I can't like see in chat, it's like, I don't know. And then it's really scooped. There's not much happening between 500 and 2K, so it just feels very, very non-present and empty. So there needs to be definition added in that region, and that's where I would go with this track. Yeah, it does have a little bit of that Justice feel. And Sepia, I see ya in chat. That's awesome. Let's go ahead and dial in your track. Yep, I'm watching the YouTube. It pops up in my feed. The YouTube chat is delayed by like 30 seconds, so that can get a little bit weird. But let's take a listen to the Sepia track. And if you are just popping in, this is Atonuv Open Studio. I'm here every single night at 6 p.m. Eastern. And this is how it works. People send in tracks. I give it a listen, help dial in some mix advice. All right. Take a listen. What's up, man?
The pressure takes over my face. There's a star in the sky, and it's brighter than ever before. Oh, what a shame. This view won't last long. The pressure takes over my face. There's a star in the sky, and it's brighter than ever before. Oh, what a shame. This view won't last long. The pressure takes over my face. The pressure takes over my face. The pressure, the pressure, the pressure, the pressure.
All right, Sepia. This is a great track. Uh, I'm so this is great. It's very good, and I love. I'm a big like fan of like the big industrial sound. This is something that I really really like, and this is clearly well done. So I'm gonna be really nitpicky. Like let that be the overarching uh, uh, veneer over all of this. I'm nitpicking. Um, so there is so kind of in general, everything is smashed. Like I would say it's like one notch hotter than I would want like something that is very very hot and aggressive, like say like modern dubstep. It's even like bordering on one just one squish over the line. Um and so that's kind of going to feed back into kind of everything here as far as the nitpicking. So we're just like we're very it's very very squished. It's very sausaged. Um and as a result, everything just feels like it doesn't have a lot of like movement and bloom. Like the kick feels a little bit constrained, the snare feels a little bit constrained. And by just loosening up a little bit on compression, probably even earlier in the mixing process, before we get into the master, I'm talking about just like taking that threshold like one notch up on everybody and just loosening up on elements a little bit. Then we're going to be able to get more of that chest push out of the kick. As of this moment, everything is kind of inherently okay, sweet, sweet. Yeah. That's awesome. So okay, we're on the same thing. So I would just like loosen up. Everything's a little bit stuck. And that's like a loudness thing. That's an overall like compression scheme, loosen up a little bit. And then as far as like where we could get just a little more oomph out of this, it's really hot, like from 30 to 90, but it's well balanced throughout the frequency spectrum. So it's like I'm even okay with that. There is a lost opportunity at 200 for that snare to just have a little more definition and body. Like we're talking about like the fundamental of that snare somewhere in that like 175 to 250 region. We could just get a little more like push, which is just kind of how I feel about this entire mix, is that there is room for these speakers to be pushing out information, and that's where we've lost the opportunity, kind of like so like there's a little bit right there in that body range of the frequency world, and then that's tying back once again to like dynamics world. is that there was a like getting push and loudness out of things starts with the frequency spectrum rather than reaching for compression or reaching for dynamics processing and loudness. It's like dial it in frequency wise first. But then the mix is really good. Like vocals are sitting in a really nice place. You are I can tell that you know what you're doing because we've got like a really, really fleshed out mid-range and upper mid-range. And that's kind of why you're able to get away with some of these things that I'm being nitpicky about, because when your mid-range is dialed in, it basically doesn't matter. Like you could have like a whole lot of garbage going on the bottom and the top, and it really doesn't matter if your mid-range is dialed in. That's kind of the deep, dark secret. Yeah, if you take that level of just like detail work and then apply it and get a little nitpicky, I bet your new stuff sounds great. If you're just dialing back on the squash a little bit. So thanks for the track. It's really good. I really liked listening to it. All right, y'all. This is A Ton of Open Studio. I'm here every single night at 6 p.m. Eastern. Feel free to send tracks to atonuvrecords@gmail.com. Is this email down there? There are rules scrolling at the top of the screen, if you don't mind giving those a read. I have a couple of tracks in my inbox still. I'm assuming that these are coming from Facebook. Once again, Facebook, not amazing as far as like chat and sending me notifications and stuff. So I'm going to go through these tracks. Hopefully you're out there. Hopefully you're watching, etc., etc. I'm going to move through them kind of quickly if you're not in like the Twitch or YouTube chat, because it's hard for me to know if you're here. So next up is a mystery track from TJess 123. So oh no, this is just this is still that Norwegian track, so we've done that one. Awesome. Okay, Scotty Dub. Oh, yeah, Sepia, send whatever you want.
Daydream. I fell asleep beneath the flowers. For a couple of hours. What a beautiful day. And daydream. I fell asleep beneath the flowers. For a couple of hours.
All right. Stay away from covers and stuff. All right.
All right. Floating the ocean of madness is waving over me. Don't yearn cause I got strength from the weight that I'm always shouldering. Water turns to war, battle with rage and potency. I reconstruct the tower of Babel to save the poetry. Soothe the angry cries, the lies of all erased from us. We all join as one after all. We all came from dust. Peace in ourselves and with others because we played enough. This is just a dream, don't pinch me cause I ain't waking up. See a vibrant world with love and care and abundance. High on life, true happiness, not from substances. Then it starts to fade, I knew better to trust in it. Wake up with a smile, realize it must have been a daydream. I fell asleep beneath the flowers. For a couple of hours.
Feels of life, but with you by my side, if I fall, it's alright. I wake and you answer my call. I see me through your eyes, and if you see my all, I'm just trying to be a part of you. Just open up my mind and I'll know what I gotta prove. Choose the path I gotta choose.
Hey, Spokes Spock. Good to see you.
This life happy. I'll do what I gotta do. Is understand the path and easy. Like we wanted to. Just keep the roads lit, sights vibrant like you ought to do. Till I find another better pebbles to make me daydream. I blow with the wind, move the flowers as they leave.
got me tripping up the block. I'm always in the chase for the fox. I like her a lot. She knows that she. I fell asleep beneath the flowers.
Okay, Scotty. I've got like a few tracks backlogging, so I've just kind of like got a feel for what's happening here. Okay, so that main guitar, the rhythm, overwhelmingly loud, and that's just like the first thing that needs to get dialed in into this mix. So first off, that, and I think it says rough mix, so it's a rough mix. Pull that back, and then the vocals need like a lot of control and some compression, and then just make sure that they have definition in the like mid-range and upper mid-range. That might also be on your checklist in the mixing process. Bass and kick are fighting a whole lot below 100, so give them their own little homes in that region, and then move accordingly from there. And it's good performances. It's a cool groove and everything. And this is clearly a rough mix, so I don't want to like just poke endless holes in it. That's oh, okay. You sent in the Justice track. Let me listen to that again, Spokesbox. So yeah, Scotty Dub. I'd be really interested in hearing this once it's outside of rough mixing, and that's just kind of where I would start. Separate out the low end, pull back that rhythm guitar, make sure that the vocals are pushed in the mids and upper mids, and then take it from there. Let me check out that track again now that you're in chat. Okay, yeah, so on those drums, it's basically, first off, you've got a lot of just like flubby information below 20 hertz, and that's just high pass that out. Get rid of that. And then below 100, we don't really have room for the kick. It's pretty occupied by bass stuff, and I would want to put like... Yeah, I mean, you've got choices. Basically, there's like 40 for like just like super, super like deep house, like just like pound kick. 60 for like a pretty translatable like chest kick. And then like 90 for like a throaty kick if you want it to be like tuned up. But generally, that's what I'm thinking for like metal and stuff like that. So... yeah, drums is just like clear some space. Yeah. Yeah, that 909 sub kick. Make sure that you're phase aligned on your kicks. I'm not getting like a push out of this. Yeah. Yeah, check phase, and then outside of phase checking, we need more definite, like if we're layering kicks, it would need to be more defined. It's just kind of just a like a general like low end like a whale of just like there is stuff there, but it's not we're not going to get like that. It's not going to move a speaker like in a live situation or just in someone's like nice home stereo. We're not going to get that punch and definition out of this. It's just going to kind of sound like a like a like a wubbing of like a wash, which I think that this is like it's got like that great like synth thing. It's driving. I want that kick to be really really well defined, and I want it to pop in the mix. All right, if you are popping in, this is a ton of Open Studio. I'm here every single night starting at 6 p.m. Eastern. If you would like me to take a listen to your mix and give you some fresh perspective on it, you can just send it to atonuvrecords@gmail.com. It is the email right below my face. There are some guidelines up top. I have stuff in my inbox. I've got Eric from South Africa, and hopefully you're watching. I'm assuming whenever I get stuff that's just kind of like unclaimed, I'm assuming that it's off of Facebook. Just know that I do not reliably get like Facebook notifications during the stream. David, what's up? Hope you're doing very good. And yeah, so Facebook, I don't really get notifications. Hopefully you're watching. I'm going to go ahead and pull up your track. If you would like to reliably chat, you can head to a ton of streaming on YouTube or to twitch.tv/Atonuv, and chat works great there. All right, here's Off from Eric. Cool, good to have you in chat, man. Hope exams are going all right.
Flossing on. Yeah, flossing on.
Okay, to answer Spokesbach, okay, so your drums are on a drum bus. It's more like I would want to go into those individual kick layers and first make sure that they're phase aligned, and then second, define them within themselves, like mix the sub 909 a little bit differently than your primary kick, and just make sure that they're not overlapping too much and not fighting each other. And yeah, the bass, it's just so below 100 is kind of the zone that you want to make sure that your kick and bass are working with each other and not against each other. Any sort of frequency overlap below 100 is going to be really, really masking and make problems for you elsewhere in the mix. So there are basically two ways to handle this. I think that the best way and the cleanest way, and even within electronic music production, is to just start with EQing out their roles. So you got to kind of make a decision about, like, do we want this to be kickier or bassier? And generally speaking, we want it kickier down below 100. So you're going to EQ out pretty aggressively, like bass information up to 60 hertz. Bass does have fundamentals that go down to 30, absolutely. But we can get perceived bass from 100 to 200 and then harmonically excite the bass in the mid-range so that it will feel bassy, and we'll get lots and lots of bass, and we'll also get lots of translatability across like many, many systems and many speakers. So be very aggressive with your bass in the very, very lows to make frequency space for your kicks. And you've got like two kicks. So it's like, okay, you're going to have to be, if you're committing to the two kick scenario, then you're going to have to be even more aggressive with your bass. So I like to get a very good bass level Okay, so what are like then you're gonna have to ask like what are you trying to accomplish with those kicks? Like if you've got like a click kick, like a beater kick, then that's kind of moot. That's cool. Like then you're not worrying about low end. But if you've got three kicks all tuned down into that low end, then yeah, you're gonna be fighting with your bass basically no matter what you do. Generally, okay. Yeah. Then you're good. Just be within those kicks. First off, make sure they're phase aligned, and then because it's like okay, you've got like the transient like beater kick, you've got a body kick, you've got a texture kick. Absolutely, make sure that they are well defined with where they're sitting frequency wise. Like if you're so if you're trying to be this distinct with the kicks, it's not coming across as that distinct in the mix. It's just kind of like there is a kick, and I'm hearing I'm hearing a whole lot of beater kick and just not much of the body and the stuff. And it's because the low end is not defined in the mix, basically. So you need to be defined within the kick stratus, like the kick world needs to be super defined. And then on top of that, the bass has to fit in to whatever scheme you've got with kick world. So you're going to have very limited room for that bass to live. So you're going to need to be like economic with your bass. And then, of course, we have sidechain. We can get dynamic effect and we can duck the bass with the kick, et cetera, et cetera. The snare. But I mean, and then we can get the effects of sidechain, et cetera, et cetera. But as far as like pure mixing, we really want to just be starting with a very, very good frequency baseline before we move into dynamics processing. Yeah, I mean, the snare lacks both bite and body, which we would want out of. Those are kind of the two things we want out of a snare. So, bite, snap, that's going to live in that 1.5 to 2.5K region. There's not a lot happening. There's also just not a lot happening in this mix from like 500 to 2K in your instrumental. So yeah, that bite, it's like we want to like spice up that snare with something that can give like a little bit of life in the upper mid range. And then body, we're talking about like its body, its fundamental somewhere like 175, 300-ish, 250-ish, depending on your snare. But it's like you're not going to be able to get that body push until you dial in this your low end on kick and bass, and that's another consideration. You're going to want to, have some space for your snare to push. Hey, thanks, man. It is free, and I'm here every single night at 6 p.m. Thanks, David. Yeah, that's what I'm feeling on this stuff. So, yeah, it's like in general we've got a low end. To summarize, it's like low end is a bit ill-defined. Mid-range lacks. There's just no mid-range here, so we would want to spice that up so that we get like perceived loudness and definition, and sounds. And yeah, snares a bit like wimpy as a result. But I mean, it's a really cool track, and I love the synth stuff, and I love the groove, and I think it's a really good track. But yeah, those elements of the mix, and then let's see what happens. Like after you cook that mid range and just like make everyone kind of play nice with each other down low. And folks, okay. So this is a ton of open studio. We are we have a lot of stuff already, just started. So this is cool. I love it when this happens. Flying at the seat of my pants. If you've got a track that you would like a fresh pair of ears on, please send it to atonuvrecords@gmail.com. Take a look at the regulations up at the top of the screen. And I do appreciate it if people like share the link and tell people that this is a good place to send tracks. It's really fun. We have a good time here. And it's always the most fun for me when I've got like a lot of stuff to listen to, and I really do enjoy it. So let's get to the next thing. We've got a track from Eric in South Africa. I'm going to give it a listen. And then Sepia's next track is on the next one. This is not the right track. Ah, my bad. Computers. Here we go. Here's Eric's track. Go start it after the intro.
Flossing on,
My bad.
yeah. Flossing on. Flossing on. By all of these papers, I run them on. I want you to, I do the most. All the pretenders, I've cut them off. I gotta move. Flossing on. By all of these papers, I run them on. I want you to, I do the most. Cause all the pretenders, I've cut them off. Oh, I've gotta move. Flossing on. Yo, flossing on. Yo, I do them all. I do them all. I was starting to think nothing's possible. By all of this.
All right, Eric. You are aggressively clipping. That is basically where this kind of like begins and ends. It is aggressively clipping. It's probably your kick hitting your master and peaking out. You might have like a limiter mixing template, and it is destroying you. So dial back your gain staging in your mix and control those levels better. I really do. I like the vibe of this track, and I like what it could be. But basically, right there, I kind of like have to stop playing it because that clipping is no good. And yeah, so you're pushing everything and you're squashing everything. It's leading to a lack of like upper mid-range definition because you're trying to make it loud. But basically the fact of the matter is loudness lives in your frequency response. And because you've dialed back and pulled back your upper mids, you're just not going to get the power that you're looking for. I'm also going to guess that this is a headphone mix. It's incredibly possible. And when we mix on headphones, we're just subconsciously taking away upper mids, like throughout our mixing process, as they can be fatiguing. So, yeah. Okay, so dial in. I do have thoughts on the loudness war. And yeah, I totally understand the clipped aesthetic. There is a big difference between the clipped aesthetic and then literally this is just digital overs going pop, 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 no good. And then that said, I think that there is like a lot of like professionally mixed trap that has like baked in saturation and clipping done in a pleasant way that isn't like, is this going to break my speakers clipping? Uh, and I think that there is like kind of some misconceptions about how to get it. So it's like we wouldn't want to clip this aggressively. Um, yeah. This isn't that clip. And like, so I understand what's going on, and it's also, there's a lot of stuff within the mix about like getting perceived. So we want perceived loudness and we want perceived bass. Like perceived is really, really, really key here, and this addresses like the loudness war as well. We want perceived loudness. Um, uh, and like perceived low end doesn't come from blowing up the absolute lowest part of the frequency spectrum, and I'm talking about like 30 hertz. And when I have something come in like across my mastering desk and or across on this show, I get a lot of stuff, and it's like really, really, really heavy at 30, 20, 30, sometimes down to like 5. And it's just people like pushing low end. And a lot of like stock 808s are just really, really, really heavy down there. But on commercial tracks, it's dialed back and it's controlled in that region. And we have that low end spread out and pushed in perceivable spectrums. Because first off, there's just the way that like we hear things, and then there's also the way that our speakers work, and it's just many systems are just not going to accurately reproduce down to 30 hertz. They'll reproduce at a slope, minus 10 dB, minus 20 dB, minus 30 dB, minus 50 dB, depending on what system you're listening on. So for many consumers, you're just giving them information that they can't use, and that's taking away from your loudness and your dynamic range. Yes, and David is right. Clipping effect is basically everything is most effectively achieved on the mix rather than pushing a final level. And yeah, I mean, gain staging and mixing low is an effective way to like manage everything better. Like Spokespock is correct, and I'm just gonna go back and chat because I think I missed something. YouTube chat. Yes, absolutely. All about the mix. Yeah, and then I mean when we talk about like compression and like where you are in your loudness as you upload to various streaming platforms, there is a bit of neuroticism and like numbers wrangling to like squeeze the most out of that with we're now on peak normalization. So yeah, if you squash stuff too much, it is actually quieter. And really where so to answer, this is all just meandering back to like what do I think about the loudness war? Well, I think that loudness is good. We want perceived loudness, especially out of genres where it's like traditionally loud. Um there is a degree of degradation that comes from pushing things to a point where we would just be better off if someone just turned up their volume knob a little bit. And I think that the granddaddy of all of it is dynamic range. We want not like classical style dynamic range where we're talking about like we need definition at minus 24 dB so that we can hear a little piccolo like off in the distance. I'm talking about inner sample dynamic range, basically in modern production, like between the kick and the snare. And that's what's going to determine kind of our ceiling and our basement of dynamic range. And First off, there's like an audiophile argument to be made that it sounds better if we are not constricting dynamic range too much. And then I would argue that our drums hit harder if they are moving from somewhere. When something is pinned up against the ceiling of the mix, there's no impact on those drums. They're not coming from anywhere. They're just going click, 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 and we're not really perceiving the bottom. I mean, you hear it a lot in like happy hardcore, where it's just beater. It's just beater kick for 4 hours. Pop, 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 pop. And we're not actually feeling the bloom of low end, and that's because it's just not happening naturally, dynamically. So that's like a thought on the loudness war. That's a thought on the recording end of things. I also, outside of studio stuff, I am a front of house engineer in Detroit. So it's, techno, EDM, electronic music every single night of the year. And the fact of the matter is, sorry, let me. Yeah, the meat part. Absolutely. Okay, so I am working with a lot of live electronic stuff, and I will say, like, my be-all, end-all thing on, like, loudness war is the people that are main staging, like, bigger electronic shows, they understand this stuff. Like, they're not pushing to insane levels live with their dynamic range because they generally understand, for the most part. I know one of Skrillex's mastering people actually, and we've talked about this. So that's the closest I've gotten there. And like there's like a master, and then it's like -7 RMS is where it got popped to, and we went like, yeah, that's pretty loud. So the thing about the live stuff, I would say that like of the people that are doing the bigger stuff, the split is like 80% of them are like showing like pretty controlled mixes and dynamic range, and then 20% of them are just smashing stuff to bits. But then on the lower stages, it's like 80% of people are smashing stuff to bits, and 20% are showing a level of constraint. It's all like kind of averaged out. But here's the thing: front of house people that are doing like 24-hour DJ shows, you kind of run into this situation where you've, if you're like running like a 300, 500 cap room for the weekend, and it's like a house system, you are trained to watch and make sure that the dynamic range is healthy on these mixes. Because of the physical limitations of speakers, they're rated for peak value and RMS value. And when, and yes, Skrillex's mixes are very good, to answer chat. So when a pinned mix comes live on the floor and it's pinned, front of house has to turn it down. Like, you're getting turned down by front of house in like a lot of like live show situations. Now, that said, if you're just playing at a bar or a club that doesn't care or doesn't have front of house or doesn't have like a dedicated engineer to the system, then it's like, yeah, people play stuff that's pinned and then they blow those speakers, and then we just end up getting called to fix those speakers. And then you run into situations where you're doing something with like a huge budget, and it's like, oh, we don't care. It's, $billion system or whatever, and we'll just replace it or have someone fix it after the weekend. And then you just like let it ride, and you're like, okay, sure, we're just going to blow it up. So that's kind of like my I have like a tiered argument, or not an argument, but it's like when I'm working with clients for mastering, when I'm setting the levels and the average loudnesses, et cetera, et cetera. It's basically like, hey, it sounds better if we have some flex. We get more low, like perceivable low end, perceivable loudness, less issues with streaming uploads, which is honestly like the last thing on my list. It's like we want the master to just be really, really good, and then streaming is going to do whatever. And the fact of the matter is, streaming loudness certifications and like they change it every like couple of years. And if you're mastering like for specifically what Spotify says right now is what they're doing, then you run the risk of having your stuff be outdated in a couple of years. And it's not what mastering was prior to streaming, and it's not what it is now. And then also with like Spotify normalization, if you read the fine print, it's like it's only applied to certain devices, and certain regions of the world have different certification targets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you can turn it off on the user end. So that's like lowest on my list of like things that I tell people. It's mostly built around like, hey, you'll get more oomph out of your oomph. And then like, yeah, I know like in a live show, it's like, oh, you want it to be very, very loud. And then, sometimes they'll be like, can I get a club master on top of it? And I'll be like, you could, and I could just pin it, but just so you know, you're going to get turned down in a lot of situations live as well, as a caveat. Yeah, so there are like within like the mastering subworld, the like kind of open secret once you are talking to people is basically no one is following those numbers. So I hope that answered like some questions, or maybe now there are more and more questions, but yeah, I have thoughts, I have opinions. And Sepia, I'm going to upload this next track. And sweet. I love industrial stuff. Let's give this a listen.
Take all of my clothes off. Paint us invisible. The truth beneath holds who we are. So come and take my clothes off. It's this kind of stranger that you beautify. I breathe in all of the air that you give when I am there. Believe me that I'm aware of your strange love. place where we don't know anyone. I said, just be at the place where we don't know anyone. Just be at the place where we don't know anyone. Fuck me at the place where we don't know anyone. Kill me at the place where we don't know I breathe in all of the air that you give when I am there. Believe me that I'm aware of your strange love.
Cool. This is another great track. Really, really great track. And once again, this is like one of my favorite like types of things to listen to, and there's a lot of really, really good things going on. So, to push back on a few elements, and I like to like kind of like figure out like root causes of stuff, you know, like figure out what the systemic thing is, and yeah, and I like listening to the whole stuff, you know. And yeah, general policy is I listen to the whole track. It's just when stuff is like doing the clip, I just can't do it. So okay, the big thing happening here is Demo Loop. What's up, man? Phasing. Big time phasing, and I would say that everything is just pushed out to the sides. We're getting like low mid phasing, so monocollapse, no good, and I think that this is pushing into a lot of moves that are just kind of piling up on top of each other. I am not like a phase freak by any means, because like Disintegration is one of my favorite albums of all time. It's incredibly phasey. And in the modern era, like the example, if you just like watch repeats of the stream, you're going to be like, he says a lot of the same things. But I do like to point to the same examples. But like the last two Tame Impala albums, guitar solos disappear in mono. Like it's really, really pushed out to the side. So, not a phase hawk. In my general thing, but we're getting a lot of low mid phasing. So it's basically resulting in like everything's kind of pushed out, everything's very indistinct in that region, and like in stereo, like I suspected that we were getting a lot of phasing because it just kind of felt indistinct from like 200 to 300, like a pretty crucial region for getting like the big definition and the big feel. So I would look and check on your like stereo imager plugins and stuff and just kind of center stuff a little bit more. And then it's going to be like, oh, everything's also like, so everything is pushed out really far to the sides and we're not getting a lot of definition in the middle. Yeah, Demo Loop, I'll check out what you're doing for sure. And then everything is kind of slamming into like their compressors and it's getting pinned. It's pinned on the master. It's a little bit cramped all in all, but I think that it all stems from just not having a solid like low mid feel on the mix. That's where I think it's all kind of starting. or it started with everything's cramming in the low mids, and it's like, oh, how are we going to clean it up? Well, let's push it to the sides. So it's like a chicken or the egg in this issue. Yeah, that synth bass is the big culprit. And because it's so crucial and it's so cool, it's a great sound. It's a great sound, but it's also not a sound that is distinct because it's so phased out. Like as I was listening, I'm like, I'm not feeling this. And yeah, so that's the big boss issue on this track. And then we are pushing into sausage territory. We are at the average perceived loudness that we're at. Our dynamic range is more restricted than I would want to see. Like, it's not getting yeah, totally. Not and that's kind of like my job is to just go like, "Oh, yeah, let's shine up this diamond." Cuz it's very good. So not getting the full breadth of sound out of it. Like, if we were hitting these loudness levels, we would want to see a little less pinning on the dynamic. Like, we want to either we want to have like an average loudness that is loud accompanied by a very unrestricted dynamic range, which is like loosening up on compression earlier in the mix, and also being a little less heavy up to 200 and dialing back, because the lower the sound is, the more effect it'll have on everything. It takes more energy to reproduce those sounds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It eats up more space. So, like, for something that we want to have this slamming loud, I would want to pull back on low end a little bit, which also leads into, this is pretty bare from 1 to 2K. In the choruses, the vocals are popping up into that region, but it's really the only time in the mix that we have like a satisfactory amount of 1 to 2K. 1 to 2K is where loudness lives. It's where the human ear is most sensitive, etc., 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 psychoacoustics. So to the modern example that I point to, I don't even particularly love the album, and it wouldn't be like the most proper reference for this, but it's the latest LCD sound system. Slamming loud, it is centered between 1 and 2K. It's flat, and then overrepresented from 1 to 2K. Slamming loud. So there's that. And then like the guitar solo at the end is basically centered like right at 2K, which is like right outside of where I would want it to be. Because it's, like, generally speaking, like, it's a little fatiguing right there. Whereas if we hit that guitar solo and it just had like general bite from 1 to 2K, then it's going to be right on top of the mix, really loud and present, and also like dialed in chef kiss perfection. And that's it. Track's really good. So it's kind of like uncovering those couple of things. That's a few ways that I would go about thinking about it. It's also very good. It's a very good song. So, good job on that. That's what matters. Okay. Demo loop. Would it be possible for you to send that in an email? Okay, Ishmael, I just got your email, and yeah, I don't really get Facebook comments, but I'm happy you're here. I will take a listen to your track next. And yeah, folks, this is a ton of Open Studio. I'm here every night at 6 p.m. Eastern. If you've got a track that you want me to take a listen to, you can send it to atonuvrecords@gmail.com. It's the email down there. There are rules scrolling at the top of the screen. If you're watching on Facebook, it is pretty spotty on sending me notifications when people like chat or comment. Head to Twitch or the A Ton of Streaming YouTube page if you can. If not, just try to get a hold of me via email. So Ishmael, you're up next. And yeah, if you just send me the download link, that would be awesome. So if you want to get that together, I'm going to check out Ishmael's track, which is Promise. Yeah, Sepia, awesome stuff. Thank you for sending your track. Send stuff anytime. It was awesome to give it a listen. Really cool vibes. Ishmael, are you mixing on headphones? Cool. Yeah, if you're ever stuck in a headphone mix, just definitely check your phase. This is good. This is a good vibe. Very melted. People are liking it. Yeah, this is nice. Ishmael, that rules. Yeah. So, Sepia, that's awesome. I'd love to take a listen to one. I'll finish up Ishmael, do demo loop, and then hit your last track. Okay. So, okay, before I get into it, I want to do the housekeeping stuff. So this is a ton of Open Studio. I'm here every night at 6 p.m. Eastern. Feel free to send stuff anytime. You can send it to atonuvrecords@gmail.com. There are some rules up top for sending in tracks. And share the link with folks. It's always the most fun when we have kind of a full house like this, so I really appreciate that. And like folks sharing the link is like 100 times more effective than me promoting myself, etc., etc. And then totally not necessary, but there is a Patreon, patreon.com/atonov. And one of the things that you get is the nightly shout out. So thank you to Elias, Ian, Tyler, Mason, and Sinux. I appreciate it a lot. Y'all are awesome. So, rolling right into this. So this track rules. The sounds are awesome. The melody is great. So I asked about like your headphone situation because it's very, very pushed out to the sides, and it's basically something that you wouldn't. It sounds awesome in headphones, but it's ill-defined in space. So it's too pushed out. We want to center this back in. We get a pretty huge amount of phase cancellation, and the track basically ceases to exist. So watch out for that. Once again, it's not normally a thing that I'm like, ooh, watch out for your phase, brother. But in this case, yeah, it's pretty extreme. So there's that. And yeah. Oh, cool. I just saw that you made every synth from scratch. This is excellent sound design. I'm a huge synthesizer freak. I've got a modular like right off camera. The with the synths, you're carrying a lot, and then we got to get into general low end stuff. So first off, those synths have a lot of stuff like below 100, like on your pads and stuff, and it's just rumble noise, and it's not doing much for you. And like anything that we can do to clear up this low end is gonna help you. Low end is pretty ill-defined. Kick and bass fighting each other. We could get the kick bumping at like 40, 50, 60, 70, or 80, somewhere in there. Give it that thump. Take some bass out in that region, and then get perceived bass from 100 to 200. I'm not really. I think that your bass line rules, but I'm not really getting any perceived bass. And Spokesbach, thank you for the follow. So we could push that bass line into 100 to 200, clear out some 100 to 200 on like your pad and other instruments and stuff, and let the bass sit there a little more. We're going to get some more kick, a little more bass, and then harmonically excite that bass line in the mid-range. There is certainly room for it. And then we're going to hear the bass more. We're going to feel the bass more and feel like we have more space and get the drive of the track. Then it's like, other than that, it's just really quiet. And I would want to like push this into a limiter and kind of call it a day. But yeah, Ishmael, awesome stuff. All right, demo loop. Let's check out your track. And yeah, Ishmael, I am kind of able to keep up with you on Facebook, so if you have any follow-up, definitely feel free to ask.
And it's only in my dreams that I get to hold you. But I'm patiently thinking that someday you want me to. And I've been up in my mind, I've been up in my mind for you. I don't have enough time, I don't have enough time, it's true. And I've been up in my mind, I've been up in my mind for you. I don't have enough time, I don't have enough time, it's true. Who you supposed to be? Stumble back home so drunkenly, saying that you wanna make love to me. I know why. Not your commodity, taking me for granted, now you gotta leave. I don't wanna hear your apologies, no more lies. Ooh, yeah, and I know where you've been tonight. Ooh, yeah, and I know she don't treat you right. Ooh, yeah, baby, you do this to yourself. If you ain't happy by my side, you should go find someone else. Ooh, yeah, and I know where you've been tonight. Ooh, yeah, and I know she don't treat you right. Ooh, yeah, baby, you do this to yourself. If you ain't happy by my side, you should go find someone else.
Okay. Very, very cool track. Really, really good vibe. Really love a lot of what is happening here. So, and Sepia, I'm just, while we're going to do your track next, if you want to just write out, tell me about your monitoring setup. Because we could maybe dial in some more like systemic stuff if I know a little more about what's going on there. So, for later. So, demo. What do you call this? Is this in the mix or is this in the master stage right now? So, first off that. And first off, big picture, you have a lot of, there's a lot of sounds that are producing stuff at like 5 hertz, 6 hertz, 7 hertz, 10 hertz. Like, high pass that out. Get rid of that stuff. It'll give you some room on the back end. Watch out for that. Kaido, what's up? So yeah, I just need. It'd be helpful if I knew where we were in production on this, so we can dial in some stuff. Okay, so do you have a cut on the master bus? It's like I would go in and clean up sounds like individually and like make sure you're brick walling. Cool. Sepia, do you have a sub? Yeah, you gotta clean up like everything, like clean them up at the source. It's like a lot of those synths, like we're just getting like big old like rumble 10 hertz and stuff. And I wouldn't cut the master at 30. Also, so first off, this is like mastering stuff. I mean I would put it at like 20. Cool. And I just mean like in general, if you have a sub, in your mixing process, but we'll get to that. So yeah, do those EQ moves on individual tracks, and cool. Clean up, yeah. I mean, we can, we run the risk of like non-phase linear EQ messing up stuff, but not if we're just cutting out like 10 hertz, 15 hertz. Just get rid of it. Get rid of that stuff. Okay, so here's where I'm concerned on workflow. You're in the mix stage, and this is clipping. That's like the overall thing that I would want to dial in on your process, because you're going to get way better results if you are gain staging better at the beginning of your template. So we're getting like a dB over 0, and we're in the mix. So like it's gonna hurt you, because it's like you're gonna go into the master, and the master just honestly can't get much louder than this. Like you've kind of pushed your limits, and then you're gonna be like, what am I even doing? And also, if you set up your environment so that you can be aiming for like true peak -6, -12 during your mix, you're gonna make better decisions, and you're gonna shape your sounds cleaner. So this is too blown up for a mix. That's the overall thing, and I think that that's just going to feed back into making better decisions in the mix in general. Then as far as like individual cleanup, the vocal is S-ing pretty significantly at like 10K. Yeah, nothing wrong with the saturation isn't where it sounds good. Like you've got nice saturation. I'm talking about the literal clipping of the track, which is different. Like your saturation is great. It's the peak value is 1 dB over 0. Don't go over 0. And we want to be in the mix stage. So don't mix into a limiter. Also, so this all speaks to just like general nice. Okay, there's just like a few things going on here. Okay, slightly pedantic, but slightly true is like if you just Google like gain staging, you're gonna see a lot of videos, you're gonna see a lot of forum talk, and they're gonna talk about like, you should really be setting all of your tracks to output at -18 dBFS. Semi-true. There is an amount of validity, because there are some plugins that operate best at -18, -12 dBFS. Analog style EQs, analog compressors that start to introduce saturation above a certain target decibel value. Okay. But sometimes we want that saturation. Okay. So like there's an exception right there. And then there are some plugins that it doesn't matter at all. That they'll be clean. You could push them up to 0 and they'll be clean. The true reason that we want to gain stage and hit a responsible peak value as we mix is that it will make us mix better. Like, it's as simple as that. It just will make you make better decisions. You'll have more dynamic range in your mixes. Your drums will be better balanced. Your mix will be better balanced, because and as you get further down into the end game of your mix, you have room to make moves. If you're like in the middle of a mix and you've already got everything slammed to 0 dB, where do you have to go? You know? And it's really just as simple as that. Like, you'll make better decisions. You will have a more natural approach to how you are like getting loudness, how you're getting your drums to hit. You're going to dial them in by getting them shaped in their dynamic response and their frequency response. And that's how you're going to get things to pop, not through just like slamming them into a limiter on your master bus. So there's that. You're going to make better decisions, smarter decisions, more responsible decisions, and you'll have room to work at the end of your mix. And then this feeds into, there is the like, you Google and it's like, hey, what level should I be sending my tracks to a mastering engineer? I'm a mastering engineer. I tell people all the time, like, I want 6 dB of headroom, clean headroom, no limiter. And there's a degree of like bad science out there, because it's like there's kind of a rumor started by the mysterious guild of mastering engineers that are like, well, at minus 6 dB, it will hit my equipment better and it will sound a little bit better. As long as it hasn't been hard limited, you could send something that's like -1, -0.1 dB. Like if you've magically like made your kick peak without a limiter at -0.1 dB, like yeah, I could master that. I could just gain it down and then run it through my stuff at the level that I like to run it through my stuff. Absolutely. The reason that the dark mysterious guild of mastering engineers has been telling people to hit like -6 dB is so that people will gain stage and make smarter decisions. Kumi, thanks for the follow. And it's a massive psychological ploy, because the true job of the mastering engineer isn't to like hit a magic compressor and hit a magic saturator, so on and so forth. It's we are supposed to make you do the best mix possible and push back on your mix. And saying like hit -6 true peak means that your mix will be better. Yeah, Kaido, so I don't get the subscribe option until I hit 50 follows and an average of 3 concurrent viewers on Twitch. And then also, it looks like to do the subscription option, I would have to stop simulcasting to YouTube. So there is the Patreon, which is like slightly cheaper than a Twitch subscription. So I'm probably going to not wind up doing affiliate once it lines up, because I'll lose my sweet YouTube people. Okay. Gain staging. Gain staging is awesome. I think that's where I was. And then my Patreon link is dead. Thanks. I'll fix that up. So the vocal is S-ing at 10K, and you're heavy from like 30 to 60. And I would just dial back those two things in the mix, and then you're good to go. And it's mostly just about like a workflow philosophy on how you're mixing. And then a lot of those problems are going to go away. All right. Just going to fix this panel real quick. Cool. Does that work? Okay, cool. And yeah, demo, this track is awesome. Send stuff anytime. I'm happy to do it. Yeah, so Sepia, like, I'm gonna listen to your beat, and so I'm suspecting like a systemic monitoring issue, and that is some stuff that we can dial in. But I'll listen with your new monitoring setup. The It makes sense that the tracks and also fantastic job mixing those tracks on like Elisa's table monitors. They sound really, really good for that setup. But it makes sense that it's like a little bit heavy on the low end and a little lacking in the mid range because like a lot of consumer speakers and stuff like that is going to lead to decisions like that. So like you're doing amazing mixing around what you've got. And I'm going to get this track loaded up. I get a little... Once I get, like, stoked about, like, talking about something, I can get a little distracted. I am wondering if... I had a question. Oh, have you done any room treatment? All right, and if you're just popping in, this is Atonuv Open Studio here every single night at 6 p.m. Eastern. If you've been working on a track and you want some fresh perspective on your mix, you could just send it to atonuvrecords@gmail.com. It is the email at the bottom. There are some rules and regulations up top. And it's very cool to have you here and very cool to listen to all of your music. Let's check out this beat. I love drill. Oh, okay, cool. I mean, I like to listen. Um, okay, so a lot of things are a lot cleaner than the other mixes. Now, mind you, we're talking about like totally different genres, different instruments and stuff. Okay, here is Um, definitely note, like, once again, I'm not that much of a phase hawk, but like those strings basically disappear in mono, and just be aware of that and check your stuff in mono and be willing to accept what happens once it collapses. And if you're cool with it, that's awesome. Um, there's a fair degree of stuff happening below 20. So be a little more aggressive with like brick wall high pass on some of these sounds. That'll save you some stuff. So basically, two things. Uh, the low end, and it's kind of like, someone. Um, we don't have a lot of perceived bass. And this is definitely something that I would expect from like 7-inch monitors in an untreated room. If this was treated to a little bigger degree, you could get more out of those atoms. But it's also basically like this is a mix that doesn't have a sub. It's very, very, very heavy between 30 and 60. And that is a thing. So you are going for big low end. And it's like when you push 30 to 60 on like smaller speakers and stuff that isn't as efficient down to that level, then it sound like it's cresting and it's sounding big down there because you're kind of pushing them to their absolute limit. Yeah, it's always 30 to 60. And it's just it's like to be expected in a lot of situations like this. So you're basically you're centering your mix in a region that won't provide the results that you're looking for. And how you're going to get a bigger low end is like bringing back that 30 to 60 and pushing it into like 100 to 200. That's where we're going to get like perceived bass, and we're going to get more room like for the kick, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then it all comes from that. And basically, like, you're referencing stuff and you're listening on a system that's just not giving you like the truth to a degree. And that's the case on a lot of like home beat maker situations. So like how to achieve it, like how to get comfy with it is like treating your room a little more aggressively. And then also just developing a template where you're just not as tempted to lean as much on those 808s between 30 and 60 and push like 100 to 200. The thing that I recommend using is a Pultec style EQ is really, really, really good for getting like beefy low end in that 100 to 200 region. Or like any sort of analog EQ. I personally reach for the Pultec all the time. The SSL, a Neve. I wouldn't do an API. Generally, I just don't like it on low end. But whatever. But it's all about what you're comfy with. And then like introduce like saturation into the mid range, which can be also achieved with a Pultec. So, you know what? I personally don't. It's not. I don't like do. I don't really like make stuff. I fix stuff. So I bet other people here have some pretty stellar packs. Okay, so I saw earlier that you've got like some foam. I'm gonna guess, is it like Oralex, like the squishy stuff? Oh, and the other thing that I would do on this mix, so like dialing in the low end, and then it's kind of like you gotta like bring out the beef in the mids. Uh, it's a little bit, it's a little bit too timid in there, but it's like, yeah, you could put a vocalist in there, but like get a little bit like put some spice, just a bit, between like 500 and 1K, so that they, yeah, it's the squishy stuff. So, um, The unfortunate truth is that squishy stuff is not going to do anything for you. What you can do with squishy stuff is get rid of flutter echo. That's like if you clap and it pings back and forth. It'll get rid of that. It'll get rid of build up like above 5K. That's what the squishy stuff will do for you. You can kind of make like a decent cloud over the top of your head with it. And as far as treating a room, I do have a no nonsense, very minimal amount of cash investment. Yeah, it doesn't do any absorption, unfortunately. It'll absorb above like 5K, and that's just not where the issues are. So the mix, that hat, I would put a de-esser on it. That's like in like trap world and all that. That's kind of like some secret sauce. Is just like a dynamic EQ or a de-esser or like Soothe 2 or something like that, and just like let it pull that hat a little bit when it gets at its biggest points, and then it's gonna pulse. It's gonna like pull the beat a little bit. It's like some the secret beat sauce. Okay, dialing in the room. First off, the cheapest thing that you can do is set up your speakers to be their absolute best. So we're talking about, okay, so you want to line them up along the short wall. Okay, so you got like a long wall and a short wall. Even if it's only shorter by like 2 inches, like say you're in like a total and complete box, you want to find the shortest one. And then you want the speakers to be equidistant from the 2 walls. All right? And then you want your listening position, which is like your head, the back of your head, your ears, something like this. You want that to be between 30 and 40% of the way from the front wall. So if the room was 10 feet long, you would want your head to be 3 feet, 3 inches away from the front wall. 30 to 40%. Some people will say that 33% is the exact sweet spot. So that's where you want your listening position to be. And then the speakers will be a equilateral triangle from your ears or the back of your head. And you have like a little bit of flex here. That's going to give you the absolute best response in your room as far as like room modes and acoustics. Then you can like tilt your monitors in a little bit and kind of like find the sweet spot there. And basically you're going to find, especially on like near field monitors and something like those Atoms, that your speakers are going to be kind of closer to your face than you would imagine. In a lot of the ideal scenarios, they call them like Texas earmuffs. So that right there is going to do the absolute most for getting your room to work with you the best. All right. Now, the next step after you've got those speakers set up is to set up a reflection-free zone. This will move the needle the next greatest amount. And how to achieve a reflection-free zone, or an RFZ, is very simple. It's absorption from your speakers to your ears. And just like the whole wall up to there, there's some like tricks. You can like find the exact place to put a panel by like having a buddy like move a mirror, and then you can see it, and that's like the first reflection point. But it's like, just put it along the whole thing, okay? 2 options here. The cheapest way to go is to build your own panel. And you can get good absorption for something like a reflection-free zone out of, I know you're in Croatia, so everything's going to be different with shipping and all that. The kind of holy grail for home acoustic treatment is Owens Corning's 703. You know, who knows? But basically any insulation will get you pretty good results. And you can just frame it out, do it outside because the stuff is nasty. But something like rock wool is a little bit easier to work with, and you can get pretty good results. And, like one layer of it for a reflection-free zone is usually going to get you where you need to be. You can double layer it, frame it out, and then wrap it in breathable fabric, like something that you can hold over your face and breathe through. That's going to give you the best absorption rate. That is the cheapest way to handle it. Is to build your own panels. And I think that this is basically like something that I basically won't compromise on. Like, you can't get the best results out of an untreated room. This is the cheapest way to get it. So there's that. The second option is there are like some prosumer options that are a reasonable price. The Prime Acoustics, like the London Room Kit, is like reasonably priced, and it does the trick. Like if you don't want to, if you're just like, I'm gonna buy something and I don't want to build stuff, that is the lowest price point that you can spend and just not be throwing money away. I am using Genelec something 870, I don't know. But Genelecs. I like the Genelecs. Oh, and I've got HS8s in my mixing spot. Yeah, okay. So RFC, so it's like first you set up your speakers. No money and the most improvement for money spent. An RFC is the next biggest thing that you can do. And then the third biggest thing, which is kind of like chunked into like these three things should really happen, is bass trapping your front wall, which the super chunk bass trap method is what to look up if you want to do it yourself. Super chunk. And it's basically as simple as it sounds. You take chunks of insulation and stuff them into the corners of your front wall, and you make like a 2-foot blob, a chunk, wrap it in breathable fabric. The corners, the front corners. Corners are where bass issues occur. So the biggest, like without taking like room measurements and using a room measurement mic, the biggest thing that you're gonna like, it's definitely the front corners is where it's gonna be. And then if you're in like the worst room in the world, eventually you would treat every single corner. Like anywhere a wall meets, and we're talking about the floors and the ceiling, et cetera, any corner. But the front corners, biggest culprit. So the super chunk, that's basically what I would recommend doing. Bang for your buck, etc. After those 3 steps, you're probably going to be in a great position. And then before doing anything more with that, first off, you're already probably in a great spot. Then I would look into SonarWorks. That will, with the reference mic, then you can measure your room, and it's going to give you a really easy to read graph that's going to tell you basically everything you need to know about your room, and it will apply a little bit of digital room correction, and then you'll kind of maximize your space that way. And after you do those first 3 steps of room treatment, SonarWorks will usually push you over the edge into a flat room. And if your room's not flat after you take the measurement, then you can do targeted fixes and figure out what's up with your room from that measurement. And this is basically a thing that you can do over the next like couple of years of your life, and just like tune your room, and basically, especially with like the level of like that you showed me 3 tracks, and it's like, yeah, this is really good. you know what you're doing, you're using the right tools, and you are getting good results, but it's also like it's like there's enough of like a consistency in some of the issues that it's like that I this is when I tell people like, hey, you got to fix up your room a little bit because you're kind of mixing around an obstacle. So that's you know, like in short, you're like, how do I control my low end? It's like, let's be able to like get a better sense of low end, because basically like everything that I've heard so far is just a little bit pushed in that region that I would imagine would be pushed in this specific scenario. And then it's like maybe consider a sub if it keeps happening. But that's it. But yeah, I love talking about acoustic treatment. Kaido, let me check out your track. Not yikes. That's exactly where we want to be. Cool. Yeah. CPO, is awesome to have you in. Feel free to stop by anytime, and I'm always happy to like clarify stuff that we talked about, or you know, go over stuff again. Um, really cool to hear what you were working on. All right. $50 is definitely a reasonable target. Let's see how it works.
Activation.
See ya. Yeah. Huge difference here.
Activation.
That's a whole lot better. Uh, this is a perfect example of defining the roles between kick and sub bass. It's really good. Um, and also pulling back on that 30 to 60, because I mean basically what happens is it because it's not flooding that region and like in a room where you can actually hear what's going on down there, I'm actually getting the um the kick hits, and then I can clearly hear your 808 slide down below it, and it's an amazing effect. It goes boom, boo. Like before, it was just kind of an indistinct blob, and if you're overloading in that region, it doesn't actually like translate, but here it happens. So, excellent on the low end. I love what's happening there. Um, if I was to just I need more to happen between 500 and 2K on like the musical elements. There's not enough mid range definition there. I would cook that middle a little bit hotter. That's it. This is I mean it sounds huge, and then once this gets once this gets pushed and brought up to loudness, it will be really 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 big, for sure. There's just so much detail brought out in here, and it's really clean. Um the snare is a little hot at this moment, and it would be a thing of it might be totally right once the instruments and the melodic elements are brought up in the mids, evaluated at that point. At this moment, it's where we're a little bare in the middle, so the snare is dominating a little too hard. But I think that gets fixed by bringing the mids up. But great, this is much better. This is really good stuff. All right. This is a ton of open studio. We're here every night starting at 6 p.m. Eastern. If you've got a track, send it to a ton of records at gmail.com. Take a look at the rules and regulations at up top. Uh, and yeah, Kaido, awesome work. Make those couple of changes. We were crazy busy today. It's been literally like almost, I think it's like over 2 hours of just literally nonstop tracks, which I think this is the first time it's happened. So, uh, you know, we've had a good run today. So I might not be here that much later, but definitely always check. Sometimes I feel like just hanging. Um, yeah, make those changes, and then let's see what happens with this track. And yeah, anyone dropping in, this is a ton of open studio. I'm here every single day. If you've got a track that you would like some fresh perspective on, you can send it to my email. It's right there. Yeah, love to hear what people are working on. It's been so busy today, I haven't even had a chance to turn on dog cam. But here we are. We've hit our first break of the evening, and we can watch Guinness be a good sleepy boy. Romad, thanks for the follow. If you are ever working on a mix and want some feedback on it, you can send it to atonuvrecords@gmail.com. How you doing? Well, that's good. Yeah, I'm an audio engineer, and every night I run this stream to help folks dial in mixes when they're working on stuff. Had actually a bunch of stuff come in, like a dozen tracks in the first couple hours. So it was really busy tonight. It was awesome. And now we're kind of in that lull period. Hey, if you're just popping in, this is a ton of open studio here every single night starting at 6 p.m. Eastern. If you've been working on a track and you want some fresh perspective on your mix, feel free to send it to atonuvrecords@gmail.com. It's the email right there. And there are some rules, guidelines, and regulations scrolling at the top of the screen if you don't mind giving those a read. You're always free to ask questions or say hey in chat. Had a bunch of tracks come in so far today. It was basically nonstop for 2 hours. It was really awesome. And now we're on a little bit of a downtime break. So I've turned on Dog Cam so that we can watch Guinness be a mostly good boy. Yeah. So when we're not like checking out tracks and stuff, it's basically just a really, really chill hang. It is literally occasionally 10, 15 minutes of just watching Guinness sleep. Uh, that's what it is. It's not that much of a chit chat unless, there's some like audio questions, so on and so forth, audio engineering perspectives, the dry, dry environment. Hey, what's up? Nice to see ya. Yeah, this is a ton of open studio. People send in stuff and get like some top-down feedback on their mix. It was actually crazy busy for the last couple hours, and we just hit our first lull of the night. Had like a dozen tracks come in, and yeah, it was awesome. And now it's the chill moment where it's just kind of like hanging out. Got dog cam on to just provide those nice, chill, sleepy dog vibes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's super cute. If you just send it to atonuvrecords@gmail.com, there are some guidelines scrolling up top. Basically, it's best if you can email me a file or make a link downloadable. Uh, if it's like copyrighted stuff, covers, or like, sample heavy, let me know and I'm going to play it off stream so that we don't get DMCA'd, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Cool. Yep, that's the email. Yep, got your track right here.
Boogie, some boogie, put some boogie. Now we're gonna put some boogie in your ears, boogie in your legs, boogie in your fingers, boogie in the hands. We got our own way to boogie. We got our own way to boogie. We got our own way to boogie. Got our own recipe to shake your body to the boogie tonight. Boogie in your tongue, boogie in your boots, boogie in your hairstyle, boogie in your shoes. We got our own way to boogie. Yeah, we got our own way to boogie. We got our own way to boogie. Got our own recipe to shake your body to the boogie tonight.
Sounds great. What was the tracking session like, and what do you have to work with?
Come on, 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 'cause now we're gonna need some booze on the drums for a steady pace. A tip top, a double bass to build up the bass. A piano player to ease the haze. Still need somebody to fill out the space. Maybe a singer, you know, just in case when the street needs somebody to sing out a phrase. We got all way to boogie. All way to boogie. We got all way to boogie. All way to boogie. We got all way to boogie. Got all recipe to shake your body to the boogie tonight. Boogie in your ears, boogie in your legs, boogie in your fingers, boogie in the heads, boogie in here, yeah, boogie over there, boogie on the stage round.
Cool, cool.
We got all way to boogie. All way to boogie. We got all way to boogie. All way to boogie. We got all way to boogie. Got all recipe to shake your body to the boogie tonight. We got all way to boogie. All way to boogie. We got all way to boogie. All way to boogie. We got all way to boogie. All way to boogie. We got all way to boogie. All way to boogie. We got all way to boogie. Got all recipe to shake your body to the boogie tonight.
Okay. Very, very good mix, especially for your first mix. There is basically this mix is very, very upper mid-range heavy, and it's mostly the vocals that are centered there. And the vocals are a little bit unstuck from the mix. Like, obviously, this is a vocal-centric mix, so we would want the vocal to be on top. But the vocal is hot, and it's specifically hot in the upper mids. And no one really has any definition up in there. In the upper mids, we want some life in the instruments in like that 1 to 3K range. So basically, I would cut the vocals a little bit from 1 to 3K. And basically where we're at is like generally with like a soprano vocal, it's naturally upper mid-range heavy, and we want to get some body in the low mids on the vocal. And then when we're dealing with like baritone and bass vocals, it's lower mid heavy, and we need to introduce upper harmonics on it. So like what I would do on this vocal is first pull it back a little bit between 1 and 3K. And then like a great way to introduce some body is to do like parallel compression on a vocal like this. So set up a send track and compress it with something like a distressor or an 1176, something that's just going to grab those low mids. And then you blend it in, and you're going to get a little more body out of the vocal. You can also use like an analog style EQ and just beef it up a little bit in the low mids. And that's basically where this mix is at. It's very, very good. It's just really focused in that area, and it's like a little bit like fatiguing as a result. And we just don't have a lot of general body in the low mids. It's also like we're not getting a lot of power out of the low mids, 200 to 500, and like everyone is also, the piano's there, the bass is there, the drums are there. Like everyone's kind of crammed down in that region. So we're simultaneously getting like information there, but it's not defined. So kind of spreading out those elements across the upper mid range is also going to allow the lower mids to get more powerful. And then there's a fair amount of like rumble and just unnecessary noise below 30 hertz. So I would aggressively high pass tracks to clean it up. And that's basically it. Like control that vocal a little bit, give the instruments a little more sparkle and life, and it's a good mix. Oh, thank you. Thank you for the appreciation. And yeah, we're here every night at 6 p.m. Eastern, and it'd be awesome to have you in absolutely anytime. Thanks for the follow. All right. This is a ton of open studio here every single night, 6 p.m. Eastern. If you've been working on some recordings and you would like some fresh perspective and feedback on your mix, you can send it to atonuvrecords@gmail.com and just follow the guidelines up top, and I will, give you some feedback. It's been said. I'm just an audio engineer that doesn't like cutting his hair. All right, if you're just popping in, this is a ton of open studio. If you've been working on a mix and would like some fresh perspective on it, you can just send it to atonuvrecords@gmail.com, and I will help you tighten up that mix. And yeah, I mean, maybe Ginger Guy 420 has productive things. I really like. I mean, if I had to, like, if we're talking about like desert island EQs, uh, the Pultec is my go-to. Uh, that's that's what I'll take over anything. AMEC 200 is a classy choice. Um, yeah, I've been doing a fair amount of remote work for the last year. I I've got a tracking and mixing spot and a mastering room. So like I've got two places to work out of, and like in normal times, I also do live sound. Obviously, that's not an option at this exact moment. But it's been it wasn't bad. It was actually pretty good in like spring and summer. Getting work and doing mixing and mastering remotely. It definitely slowed down a little bit in the winter, but it's going all right. Um, I mean, as far as like starting a business or like beginning the mixing process. I mean, because it kind of like ties in like you want to like I would say that it all starts with having like a reliable monitoring setup. I think that that's like the full stop, like no compromise. Like that is the tool that you need. Dialed in monitoring situation, uh, and then uh, the best advice that I can give is doing direct client reach outs, like finding people that you want to work with and directly uh, uh, offering your services. Passive advertising, like ads and stuff like that. It just is not nearly as effective as going out and reaching out to clients. I mean, when I mean, I was doing lots and lots of local work this way, but then also as far as the internet, it's like looking people up and directly interacting with people and being a human. People like humans, and directly offering services as opposed to indirect offerings. Yes, absolutely. And I that's basically my best business tip. And never work for free. That's another thing. I fully advocate for if you're doing work, you should be paid. And people treat you more seriously if you are doing work for money. You will have better client relationships and you will ultimately make better stuff. Don't work for free. That said, it's totally acceptable within the business to, like if you're doing reach outs, you can offer to do a free demo. That's really standard in the business. And a demo consists of like a verse and a chorus or like a set, you can like mix the track or master the track and do the whole thing, if you're feeling confident, like I'm going to nail this gig, but then send the potential client like a snippet so they don't have the whole thing. You're just upfront, like I will do the demo for free and make sure that we're a good fit, et cetera, et cetera. That's basically your script. And if you feel confident in your ability and you're kind of willing to like go to bat at like I will make this demo that is good enough and I feel personally comfortable doing it, then that's how you would go about it. Wear tag, thanks for the follow. Yeah, and you're welcome. I'm here every night. If you're ever working on a mix and you need some perspective, I'm happy to help out. And if you're just popping in, this is a Ton of Open Studio. I'm Scott. I'm here every single night starting at 6 p.m. Eastern. If you've been working... oh, cool. Thanks for joining the Discord. It's we're starting to do some cool stuff on there. I put the Discord together like a week ago, so it's there will be more going on a little bit. But anyway, this is a Ton of Open Studio here every night starting at 6 p.m. If you've been working on a mix and would like some fresh perspective on it, you can send it to atonuvrecords@gmail.com. There's some guidelines scrolling at the top of the page. Always feel free to ask a question or just say hey in chat. And that's it. The first 2 hours tonight were crazy, in all honesty. Tons of stuff came in. Probably the most that we've had so far. So it has slowed down. I'm cool with that. Just going to chill for a little bit. We've got dog cam going in the over there so that we can all just kind of relax, let the sleepy dog vibes hit the stream. But yeah, it's just the hangout time. If you've been working on something and would like the ears, then that's cool too. Yeah, there's a ton of website down in the panels there that have like some before and afters and stuff. All right. Crazy busy for a bit there today. Let's go ahead and call it for the night. It was awesome. Really great listening to people's tracks. Be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern and every day after that. Have a good one, everybody.